Having survived a close encounter with the LNU complex wildfire, we now have a second one, the glass fire, raging over the hills and heading our direction. We have all our crap on the bench, our hardware and fixings laid out before us. It was a little bit of an afterthought, but some of these are pretty beat up. So although I have just made an expensive purchase, I'm going to do the initial installation with what I have. Now the initial installation is quite an experimental affair because of these shims, okay? They dictate the amount of pressure on the swivel pins so that you have just the right amount of poundage to get the turn, not too much and not too little. Now in regards to these shims, I don't recall taking any off the bottom, although two separate sources say on a Series 1 that they should be there. Another piece of information I haven't been able to glean just yet is the need for a gasket or some form of a sealant, though I suspect that aviation former gasket, a little smear of that on the shims probably wouldn't hurt. Finally, we must notice that the bolt and stud holes for the end caps go right through into the housing itself. So I'm proposing upon the final installation that we put some thread sealant on the threads of the bolts and studs. Okay, let us proceed. Oh, shit, that went better than expected. Where's my bolts? Lost. Shit. All right, back on the ground. So you may wonder why I'm not using the original shims, but if you recall from the swivel housing blues, they were all buggered upon extraction. That was a little rough, always a little rough. So the observant person will also know that I haven't included the lockers just yet, but as I did make clear, this was going to come apart again. We won't forget the lockers. Based off the original shims, done a bit of a, Jesus, they're all buckled up, a bit of a guesstimation on what I reckon the others should be. We have our new ones. Yep, close-ish. Put them on there. Now, inside that Railco bush, I'm going to go and take the liberty of dumping in some heavy oil in there. Why not? I mean, why not? Just give it a bit of a grease up. Can't see it's gonna hurt. A little on there. Now, let's have a look at this. Pop that in there. Well, the shims that were initially designed to the original specifications that was on the truck was way too loose. There was just a big gap in between that and the and this bracket. And then we put on a few more shims and it was still too loose. And when we got the Railco conversion kit, that came with new shims, plus I bought some more as well on top of that. And now we've got a lot of them on. Tighten this down, see how it goes. Hope for the best. So this is amusingly called a fishing scales for measuring fish. However, real fishermen do not use such a thing. Real fishermen will just take a generous guesstimation of what the fish weighs and add 10 pounds. This is a bit of a joke. Anyway, we have to measure the poundage, that's what we're using it for. And this one here goes on the other side, and you can see that it is roughly about the same length as that last hole just there. So obviously the leverage on this will be much more betterer than in the middle. So we want an accurate one of what it should be. Let's turn this thing on. And we're looking at for around, I think around 7 kilos of pressure to get this swivel moving. Shit, that was 16. All right, that is all the shims we have, and this thing's still twice as tight as it should be. We're going to have to analyse the issue. Well, here we are on the bench, covered in crap. There's been a few, quite a few projects going on at the moment. So I think we might have uncovered one of the reasons why things aren't going so well for us. So this is our original bushing. All right, we're going to pop this in there. Okay, now you might have to shuffle in close to have a look at this. Don't mind the smell. I think if you've been following this series for a while, you would have gotten used to it. Come on, shuffle on in. Have a close look as to where it's sitting in that bushing. Okay, keep that in mind. Now, we're going to shove it into this one. This is the one we sort of reamed out a little, and this is going to be on the other side, and we slot that in. And if you have a look, there is a difference. It's sitting higher. Why? Okay, well, if we can pull that out, and we have a little look inside, what's supposed to be in there is a thing called a thrust washer, and by the look of it, it appears there is one in there. Now if we go to the original and let's find a screwdriver, and we have a look in there, I don't know if it's actually metal that I'm hitting there, but whatever it is, it's a lot thinner than that. So that's going to be the ticket right there. So in other words, it's going to fit a lot lower in the original, requiring less shims, a lot higher in the new one, requiring a lot more. So we have some more on the way, and hopefully they'll be here soon. Well, the shims have arrived and we've set to work. Recommended by the workshop manual was a pull weight of between 6.2 and 7.2 kilos to get that swivel housing to turn. Now it took a stupid amount of shims on both the top and the bottom to get it down to 6.7. But once we did that, we noticed some orbital wobble, which I can't imagine is overly good. So I started to remove the shims until the wobble went away. And at that point we were down to about an 8.7 pull weight. And then I started removing shims until it began to increase, and then I stopped there. Now you may remember we had to ream out that Railco bush to allow this top pin to fit, and that may be offering up a little extra resistance. Either way, I'm going to have to settle with a slightly tighter housing than recommended by the Green Bible. At this point, we're going to take it all apart again, and we're going to have to thread seal our studs and bolts and then fit the back seal. Right, I'm going to get serious. Going to give that bush inside a bit of a grease, if I can find it. Yes. So here, a bit of a smear. Go like that on my britches. Okay. Now in regards to doing up these nuts, I was talking earlier about torque settings, but according to the workshop manual, you just tighten them down. Just give a little bit of grunt when you feel it resist. Maybe a quarter of a turn more, or maybe just a smidgen of an inch perhaps, which if you're talking metric probably means like just a little bit. Right, bit of grease around the lip of our seal. Probably could have done this before I put it on, but then it would have just got all Shitty. Kind of want it in the grooves. It's got like two bits on it. Okay, let's fit this seal. Now first, on the retainer, we have those little holes down the bottom there. You might be able to see. That goes down the bottom because under here we have the oil draining thingamajig. All right, pop that in there. Now what I'm hoping is that we get a good solid seal. That's what I'm hoping. Whether or not we do remains to be seen. Okay, that looks like it's clamped into place good. Now before we get too excited about doing up all these little bolts, we have to remember we have to put this in, because right here we have what's called a lock stop plate, and this is a lock stop bolt. So according to the workshop manual, with the size of the tyres that I have, it needs to extend somewhere around, where are we? Around 1.6 millimeters from the bottom of the bolt to the top, and it's going to go in there with a little lock stop on it. Now, I did order some new ones, and they did arrive, and like a magician, I've managed to make them disappear. Like, gone. I can't find them. New lock stop plate, new lock stop bolts, and disappeared. So I'm just going to use the old ones, and I did go on to the website to order some more, and a few nicks and knacks and bits and pieces to a total cost of around $14 or $15. Postage was going to be $50. So I'm going to hold off on those and wait till I have a more substantial order, which I'm sure is going to arrive soon. The seal looks like it's got good coverage. The lock stop's working. Let's move on. Got a second wildfire threatening us at the moment, and there's a lot of projects have been stalled in the workshop because we've got no power, but we can still potter along with the Land Rover. Stub axles. Look at this one, very shiny, brand new for about 30 bucks. We've covered on the originals. They have a removable collar right there for the oil seal and what looks like a bush living inside there. However, on the new ones, the removable collar is not there, it's built in. And it doesn't look like they have a spot for the bush in the back. So these are obviously a cheaper use them and throw them away model. All right, let's put on the brake backing plate, the gasket, and chuck it on. Probably about now I'd put on the brake cylinder and even the brakes themselves. However, the brake cylinder I bought, I don't know, a long time ago has just, like the other parts, vanished. So let's put on the hub. There's a very tight-lipped secret about these items here that I think everybody knows about, but no one would tell me. There are differences in the hubs. This one I wanted to do away with, and to purchase this one here. So it is that I think around the 1980s, with this later model Series 3s into the Defenders, Land Rover beefed up their bearing system, which meant the hub had to change. But prior to that, the bearings were the same, the seals, the stub axles. It made sense to me that the hubs would be the same all the way down the line, but it appears that is not the case. In around the 1960s, with the onset of the Series 2A, the hub was slightly different. Now those hubs that I spoke of can be purchased from $50 to $100 a piece, usually with a bearing kit thrown in as well. However, these earlier model ones are not only very hard to find, but also very expensive, ranging from around $200 to $300 a shot. Okay, you could replace all four of the newer ones with one of these. The only difference that I could end up finding was that the wheel studs were slightly different and a little bit beefier. Now, I did purchase a 10-inch brake drum from Rover's North, and it looks no different to what's already on the vehicle. So I think I'd be good to go if I did choose either option. Alright, let's install these guys. Gee whiz, on closer inspection I'm finding this new hub that I bought to be quite beat up around the back. I'm just taking a file and taking off the bearing. And I did hammer in the old race as well to see if it would fit in, and it does. So I think we can salvage it. Ooh. Now we have our very nicely painted Selectro freewheeling hubs thingamajig. Do a bit of an inspection inside. So there we have it. You can see inside the spring that pushes up and down on this thing. And it does look like there's still stuff you can take apart. However, I don't know if I can get parts to replace anything that I might break while getting out. And as it's all looks in good order, if it ain't buggered, don't fix it. So I think I'll replace what I have back in there, and a bit of lubrication with some grease wouldn't hurt. I think I don't want to pack in too much in case it inhibits any movement, but that should be good. That thing I just put in needs to be supported. There we go. Okay, the circlip can be a little bit of a mission to get in. At least get it in properly. That feels pretty good. Okay, before we begin our reassembly, notice the damage that's on our new hub right there. So in addition to the Hylamar former gasket on our gasket, I'm going to put some in there as well to make sure I fill it in. Yeah, I suppose that's what happens when you buy something that's been laying around for 60 years. Oh. So in this little hole goes our felt washer. Screw that in. And we've got our metal washer. Pop that in there. And our castle nut. Screw that in there. All right, that might be it. To finalise the front end, there are a number of jobs we've already seen down at the back bit. So to avoid any unnecessary repetition, we're going to proceed behind the scenes with some of these jobs, such as setting the front springs and locking them in place, attaching the front flexible hoses and routing the new copper lines along the chassis, attaching new heavy-duty shocks, not to forget the big heavy washers down the bottom. I don't know who could ever forget about those things, but there are plenty of shonky practitioners out there. And brand spanking new bump stops. Very exciting. Now, it's true that horsepower will pull a chariot along, but if one wants control over the direction one travels, then one must install the necessary components to facilitate that control, which is the focus of the next chapter, the reins of the chariot.